I am a software developer who built a successful productivity app after years of hard work. My 3-year relationship with Sophia ended when she betrayed my trust in the worst way possible. She not only walked out but tried to claim ownership of my app, which I had created from scratch. When a lawsuit came out of nowhere, my entire life was turned upside down. Before I dive into this crazy story, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had someone try to take credit for your hard work. Trust me, you will want to hear how this ends. My journey into this legal nightmare began 4 years ago in Seattle. I was working as a senior developer at Growth Tech, a mid-sized company that had been steadily expanding its client base. My role involved creating customized software solutions for businesses, and I had built a solid reputation for delivering reliable code. The pay was decent, and my colleagues were great, but I always felt I could create something more impactful on my own. That ambition led me to attend the Northwest Tech Summit, an annual conference that brought together innovators from across the region. The daytime sessions were informative, but the real networking happened at the after-party hosted at the Emerald Lounge downtown. That is where I first met Sophia. She was standing near the bar laughing with a small group. What caught my attention first was how attentively everyone listened when she spoke. She had this magnetic confidence about her. She worked in user experience design at a competing firm, and when we started talking about the challenges of creating truly intuitive interfaces, the conversation flowed naturally. Most developers overthink functionality and forget that real people have to use these things, she told me, sipping her gin and tonic. The best apps feel invisible. We exchanged numbers, and 2 days later, we met for coffee at a small place near Pike Place Market. One coffee turned into lunch, which turned into dinner. By the end of the week, we had seen each other 3 times. There was an undeniable chemistry between us, both intellectually and romantically. Our relationship developed quickly. We discovered shared interests beyond tech, from hiking the trails around Mount Rainier to binge-watching obscure documentary series. We had inside jokes about terrible user interfaces we encountered, and we developed our own shorthand for communicating. When I introduced her to my parents during their visit to Seattle, my mom later called to tell me, "Sophia seemed like someone who really gets you." About a year into our relationship, we decided to move in together. We found a 2-bedroom apartment in the Fremont neighborhood with large windows and enough space for both of us to work from home occasionally. The 2nd bedroom became our shared office, though we set up our desks on opposite sides to avoid distracting each other. It was around this time that I began seriously working on an idea that had been percolating in my mind for months. A productivity application I called TimeFlow. The concept was to create a task management system that adapted to user behavior, learning from their work patterns to suggest optimal scheduling. What made it unique was its predictive algorithm that could identify potential bottlenecks before they happened and suggest workflow adjustments. This could really help people who struggle with executive function issues. I explained to Sophia one evening as I sketched out the user interface. It is like having a personal assistant who knows exactly how your brain works. In those early days, Sophia seemed genuinely supportive. When I would work late into the night coding, she would bring me coffee or suggest I take breaks. She would occasionally look over my shoulder and offer perspective on the user experience. "The color scheme needs work," she said once, "and these menu options should be more intuitive." Her suggestions were helpful, though I always made the actual implementation decisions myself. My best friend James, who worked as a contract lawyer for several tech startups, helped me with the initial paperwork to establish my ownership of the intellectual property. He set up the LLC and drafted the terms of service for when the app would eventually launch. Document everything, he advised me over beers one night. Every line of code, every design decision. Keep a developer journal with timestamps. You never know when you might need to prove what you created and when. I followed his advice meticulously, keeping detailed records of my development process. I even set up an automatic GitHub repository that logged all my commits with timestamps. My sister Denise visited us that summer and pulled me aside during a barbecue on our small apartment balcony. "I am not sure about Sophia," she whispered, while Sophia was inside getting more drinks. She seems a bit controlling. The way she talks about your app, it is almost like she thinks it is hers too." I brushed off her concerns. She is just excited about it. She has been really supportive. But looking back, there were warning signs. Sophia had started referring to the app as our project when talking to friends. When I corrected her gently, she would laugh it off, saying, "Well, I have to listen to you talk about it constantly, so I feel invested." At work, my colleague Paul became interested in what I was developing. He had experience with similar applications and offered valuable technical advice about scaling issues I might face. When I mentioned his input to Sophia, she seemed irritated. "Why are you discussing our app with him? You cannot trust people in this industry not to steal ideas." I found her reaction strange, especially the use of our app again, but I was too focused on the development to dwell on it. The app was coming along well. I had a working prototype that I was testing with a small group of friends. The feedback was encouraging, with users reporting significant improvements in their productivity. I had invested nearly $15,000 of my savings into development costs and server infrastructure. As the app began showing promise, Sophia became increasingly possessive of my time. If I spent an evening coding, she would complain that I was neglecting her. These small arguments became more frequent, but I always tried to compromise, setting aside specific date nights when I would not touch my computer. Then came a breakthrough. A small angel investor reached out after seeing a demo expressing interest in potentially funding the app's full launch. This was the validation I had been hoping for, and I was ecstatic. I started dreaming bigger planning enhancements and marketing strategies. With things looking up professionally, I decided it was time to take the next step personally as well. I purchased an engagement ring that stretched my budget considerably, a platinum band with a modest diamond that I thought matched Sophia's elegant taste. I hid it in my desk drawer, planning to propose during our upcoming weekend trip to the San Juan Islands. Life seemed perfect, with both my relationship and my passion project heading toward exciting new chapters. I had no idea that everything was about to fall apart. The day that changed everything started normally enough. I had an important meeting with potential investors, so I dressed in my best suit and headed downtown. The meeting ran long as they asked detailed questions about scaling potential and monetization strategies. By all accounts, it went well, and they indicated they would be in touch soon with a decision. I caught the bus home earlier than expected, eager to share the good news with Sophia. When I opened our apartment door, I found her sitting at my desk going through my development notes and computer files. She had accessed my private GitHub repository and was copying files onto a thumb drive. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She jumped, clearly startled by my early return. "I was just looking at our progress," she said quickly, closing the laptop. "You know I have contributed ideas to this app. Our progress." "My app, Sophia. Why are you copying my files?" The argument that followed was unlike any we had before. Her voice rose as she claimed she had been instrumental in the app's development. According to her new version of events, time flow had been her idea all along, and I was just the coder implementing her vision. "Without my user experience input, you would just have unusable engineer garbage," she said coldly. "You are obsessed with this app, and you do not even appreciate my contributions." I was stunned. In the 3 years we had been together, I had never seen this side of her. When I pointed out that I had conceived of the app before we even met, showing her early concept notes with dates, she dismissed them. "Anyone can backdate notes," she said. "You have always been threatened by my success." 2 days later, while I was at another meeting with the development team from work, Sophia moved out. I came home to find half our apartment empty. She had left her key on the kitchen counter with a note that simply read, "I deserve better." My shock quickly turned to panic when I realized my laptop containing crucial code and the latest prototype was missing. It was not in its usual spot nor anywhere in the apartment. I called and texted Sophia multiple times. Her responses were cold and dismissive. "I do not have your precious laptop. Maybe you left it at work because you are always working." Over the next few days, I received strange notifications about login attempts to my development accounts from unknown devices. I immediately changed all my passwords and enabled 2-factor authentication on everything. Something did not feel right, and my developer instincts were screaming that I needed to protect my work. Through mutual friends, I learned that Sophia was now dating Trevor Blackwood, the founder of Rival Edge, a company known for quickly copying innovative software and undercutting the original developers. They had apparently been seeing each other for at least 2 months, completely overlapping with our relationship. Then came the first threatening email from Rival Edge's legal department, claiming intellectual property concerns regarding my app. They alleged that concepts similar to my time flow were already under development at their company. My suspicions about Sophia's betrayal were confirmed when I discovered through our shared cloud storage account she had forgotten to log out of that. She had been secretly recording our conversations during my work sessions for months. There were dozens of videos where I explained my coding decisions and algorithms, thinking I was just talking through problems with my supportive girlfriend. The first formal legal letter arrived a week later demanding that I cease development of their app. It claimed that Sophia had been the conceptual creator, and that I had merely implemented her ideas as a work for hire. My shock turned to horror when I discovered Sophia had been forwarding herself copies of my work emails and development files for months. She had systematically gathered evidence to support her false narrative, taking my offhand comments about her helpful feedback and twisting them to seem like she was directing the project. I immediately called James, who reviewed the situation and delivered the sobering news that this was serious. They are building a case to claim she was the intellectual creator, he explained. In intellectual property cases, proving who came up with the core concept can be tricky. They have a large legal team and are hoping you will just give up. I needed a specialized intellectual property attorney, which meant coming up with $5,000 for the initial retainer. My savings had already been depleted by app development costs, and with the potential loss of the investor who had gone silent, after likely being contacted by Rival Edge, my financial situation was precarious. The stress began affecting my work performance. I nearly missed critical deadlines, as sleepless nights became the norm. My mind was constantly racing, trying to understand how someone I had loved could betray me so completely. Some of our mutual friends began avoiding me. I later learned that Sophia had been telling people I had stolen her app idea and refused to give her credit. Her version painted me as the villain, and some believed her without ever asking for my side of the story. My sister Denise, despite her own financial struggles as a single mom, lent me $3,000 toward legal fees. I knew something was off about her, she said. We will fight this together. While packing up the last of Sophia's things that she had left behind, I found a journal hidden in the back of her desk drawer. What I read made my blood run cold. There were detailed notes about her plan to secure her future by leveraging my app. She had systematically documented which parts of the development she could potentially claim as her ideas, and there were notes about Trevor and how his company could help expedite the process. The final blow came when I was served with official lawsuit papers at my workplace in front of colleagues and my boss. The humiliation was complete, as whispers spread throughout the office about the developer being sued by his ex-girlfriend. The lawsuit claimed Sophia was entitled to 70% ownership of time flow and $200,000 in damages for my alleged theft of her intellectual property. The lawsuit documents contained shocking claims that left me reeling. According to the sworn statements, Sophia had conceptualized the entire TimeFlow application during her workday at her UX design job. She claimed I had merely acted as the programmer implementing her vision, and that we had a verbal agreement for co-equal ownership. Her statement included specific features she allegedly designed, many of which had been in my original concept notes long before we met. But without dated and witnessed documentation, it would be my word against hers. The situation worsened when Rival Edge announced the beta release of their new product called Productivity Plus, which bore striking similarities to my TimeFlow app. Their marketing materials touted features identical to those I had spent years developing. The timing could not have been more suspicious, coming just weeks after Sophia had moved out with my laptop. A small tech blog picked up the story, running a piece titled "App Developer Accused of Stealing Girlfriend's Innovative Concept." The article presented Sophia's claims as facts and portrayed me as yet another male developer, taking credit for a woman's ideas. the comments section filled with people condemning me without knowing any of the actual circumstances. My boss called me into his office, concern evident on his face. "Ian, we value your work here, but this lawsuit could affect our company's reputation. I need to understand what is happening." I explained the situation as calmly as I could, showing him my development logs and timeline. He seemed convinced of my innocence, but warned that the company might need to distance itself if the lawsuit gained more publicity. Meanwhile, the legal bills were mounting rapidly. By the time we filed our initial response to the lawsuit, I had spent $15,000 maxing out 2 credit cards. My attorney warned this was just the beginning if the case went to trial, potentially costing upwards of $50,000. One night, sitting alone in my apartment, surrounded by legal documents and past due notices, I broke down. All my hard work, my savings, and my reputation were being destroyed. For a brief dark moment, I considered abandoning the app completely, just to end the nightmare. I could declare bankruptcy, move to another city, and start over. Then I discovered something that reignited my determination. Sophia had created backdated design documents to support her claims, but she had made a critical error. The digital files showed creation dates from last month, despite being labeled as from 2 years ago. Additionally, the design software version used had only been released last year, creating an impossible timeline. Trevor's company, sensing my financial distress, sent an insulting settlement offer, $10,000 for all rights to the app. This was a fraction of what I had already invested, let alone the app's potential value. The offer came with a 48-hour deadline, a clear attempt to pressure me when I was at my lowest. Instead of accepting, I scheduled an emergency meeting with my attorney. After reviewing all the evidence, she identified several serious flaws in Sophia's legal arguments. Most importantly, she found that the automatic GitHub commits with timestamps provided irrefutable evidence of my continuous work on the project long before and after Sophia's involvement. Another breakthrough came when I remembered Sophia had used our shared iPad to check her email occasionally. When I checked the device, I discovered she had never logged out of her cloud account. With my attorney present as a witness, we found a damning email thread between Sophia and Trevor, dating back 6 months. The messages explicitly discussed their plan to claim ownership of my app, with Trevor writing, "Once we have the code base, our team can rebrand it quickly. Your insider position is invaluable." This evidence revealed that Sophia had not only violated our relationship trust, but had potentially committed perjury in her sworn statements. Further investigation showed she had violated specific terms of service for several development platforms by copying proprietary code without authorization. After weeks of feeling helpless, I finally saw a path forward. My attorney suggested a strategy she called malicious compliance, letting Sophia and Trevor's case proceed until they fully committed to their false claims in court, while we quietly built an overwhelming countercase. I scheduled a detailed meeting with my legal team to develop a countersuit for fraud and intellectual property theft. The documentation was meticulous, including timestamped development logs, original concept sketches, and server access records, showing exactly when and where all development had occurred. I reached out to my early beta testers, securing statements from 12 different users, confirming they had tested versions of the app before the dates, when Sophia claimed to have conceived the core features. My colleague Paul provided crucial testimony about our conversations regarding the app's development, firmly establishing my role as the sole creator. Through industry contacts, I learned that Sophia and Trevor had raised over $2 million in venture capital funding based on the promised release of Productivity Plus, using my stolen code and concepts as their proof of concept. Investors had been told the legal issues were merely a disgruntled ex-boyfriend making trouble and would be resolved quickly. As the discovery phase of the lawsuit progressed, I maintained meticulous records of every interaction, preserving emails, text messages, and phone records. Rather than fighting each allegation separately, I followed my attorney's advice to let Sophia and Trevor fully commit to their narrative, essentially giving them enough rope to hang themselves legally. When the case finally went before a judge, I had spent months preparing. Every piece of evidence was cataloged and cross-referenced, creating an airtight timeline of my app's development. I had followed the exact legal procedures required, a form of malicious compliance that would ultimately work in my favor. The first court hearing was tense. Sophia appeared confident, dressed immaculately, in a conservative business suit. Her attorney presented their case, first painting a picture of a brilliant UX designer whose ideas had been stolen by her programmer boyfriend. They showed the judge her design documents and played carefully edited clips from our recorded conversations that seemed to support her claims. I noticed the judge's skepticism growing as my attorney began cross-examination. When asked specific technical questions about how the app's core algorithm functioned, Sophia's answers were vague and inconsistent. She could describe what the features did, but not how they worked, a critical distinction that undermined her claim as the conceptual creator. The dramatic turning point came when my attorney presented the email evidence between Sophia and Trevor. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read through their explicit plans to steal my intellectual property. In one particularly damning exchange, Sophia had written to Trevor, "He has no idea I have been recording our sessions. Once I move out with his laptop, he will have no proof he created anything substantial." Sophia's testimony completely fell apart under further cross-examination. She attempted to claim the emails were fabricated, but the digital forensic expert we had hired authenticated them conclusively. Her own attorney appeared increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted. The technical expert who reviewed the code base confirmed that the programming style was consistent throughout, showing the same developer had written all the core modules. He also testified that the code contained specific algorithmic approaches that matched examples from my previous work projects, creating a clear signature of my development style. The judge did not hold back, delivering a harsh rebuke to Sophia for attempting to defraud the court. "In my 20 years on the bench," he said, "I have rarely seen such a calculated attempt to misappropriate intellectual property through deception and perjury." Our countersuit was accepted, with Trevor's company added as a co-defendant for their role in the intellectual property theft. The evidence showed they had knowingly participated in the scheme, with Trevor personally directing Sophia's actions. After the damaging testimony and evidence were presented, Sophia's lawyer withdrew from the case, citing irreconcilable differences with the client regarding case strategy. A professional way of saying he would not continue representing someone who had likely committed perjury. The judge ruled completely in my favor, awarding me full ownership of TimeFlow and all related intellectual property. Additionally, he ordered punitive damages to cover all my legal costs, plus an additional $75,000 for the deliberate and malicious nature of their actions. The fallout for Sophia and Trevor was swift and severe. When news of the judgment spread, Trevor's company investors demanded an emergency meeting. Upon learning of the ethical violations and potential fraud involved, several major backers pulled their funding. The company's reputation was shattered, and within 6 months they announced they were ceasing operations. The financial judgment ordered Sophia to pay all my legal costs, which by then exceeded $60,000. The court also issued a permanent restraining order, preventing both Sophia and Trevor from developing similar applications or attempting to contact me or my business associates. The legal victory was complete, but the emotional toll had been immense. I had lost trust in people, accumulated significant debt despite the judgment, and spent over a year of my life fighting instead of creating. Yet through this painful process, I had also discovered who my true friends were, and found strength I did not know I possessed. In the months following the lawsuit, I focused on healing and rebuilding. My sister Denise was my rock throughout the process, checking on me daily and reminding me that one person's betrayal did not define my worth. James, my lawyer friend, had connected me with his professional network, helping me rebuild my reputation in the industry. 6 months after the court victory, I officially launched TimeFlow to the public. The app quickly gained traction, with tech blogs praising its innovative approach to productivity management. A major tech company reached out about a potential partnership deal that respected my complete ownership while providing resources for expansion. The experience taught me to implement rigorous security protocols and business practices. I now required signed NDAs before any substantive discussions about development, maintained comprehensive documentation of all creative processes, and restricted access to code repositories. I also found myself building new authentic relationships within the industry. At a developer conference in Portland, I met a group of ethical programmers who valued collaboration over competition. These friendships helped me rebuild my trust in others, though I remained more cautious than before. The most important lesson was learning to move forward without being consumed by bitterness. I could have spent years pursuing every penny of the judgment against Sophia, but I chose instead to focus on making TimeFlow successful. Living well truly became the best revenge. My app was featured in a major tech publication's success stories section, which described the legal battle but focused primarily on the innovative technology. I used some of the proceeds to establish a small scholarship for ethical developers, turning a painful experience into something that could help others. I still think about those dark days sometimes, but they no longer have power over me. The experience taught me to trust my instincts, document everything, and value genuine relationships over convenient ones. Most importantly, it showed me that maintaining your integrity, even when it seems easier to give up, eventually leads to justice. Have you ever had to stand up against someone who tried to take credit for your work? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself is always worth it, even when it seems impossible. Thanks for listening, and remember, document everything in life, not just in code.